Hello, it's time for another round of hot takes. We are 4 days into Harvest of Sorrow dropping. We're on patch 9.4, and I've already done one hot take video. You guys liked it, so therefore we're doing another one. I'm putting out my predictions on what I'm seeing on the ladder, what I'm seeing in card design, and what it means for other cards in the game. Putting my thoughts out there so that they either age like fine wine and I'm rewarded for it and everyone says, wow, Plain Talk John, so smart. Or everybody chews me out about it later on saying, hi John, you're such an idiot. It's going to be great either way, just a little bit of fun. Let's dive in. First things first, defenders are quickly becoming very, very bad. This does not mean they won't see play. Things like Kelly will still run Cave Troll. And also meme decks will absolutely be running these because meme decks usually require like 6 cards living to make the full combo work. Yes, I'll still be running these in my meme decks. But they're worse than ever before to the point where you may want to consider alternatives to them. So historically, they've been very good because Purifies, let me go ahead and just do a reset on filters. Purifies, I can't spell today. Purify was always a pretty annoying thing to acquire. Usually you had to spend 5 or more provision. But now with Pellar as a 4 for 4, it's unbelievably runnable as one of your last slots in your decks. Most decks have 1 or 2 throwaway 4 provision spots that you can just shove in a tech card. If any really good provision deck appears, or a really good defender deck that's really greedy appears, the low cost, low provision Purifies are going to be devastating. Therefore, I think the future defender is pretty grim. Because if we go back to the defender, ignore our friend Mahakam defender, it's just kind of sneaking his way in here. These are all pretty bad on points. There's 7 for 9s. We are starting to get into the age of 8 for 4s. So for example, let me go ahead and pull up a cultist I think people are overlooking. Good old Savlad Butcher. 5 for 4, damage annihilated by 2, give an enemy unit bleeding for 3. As long as you're damaging something that either wants to be damaged or has armor, it is on paper an 8 for 4. This just came out in the recent patch of 9.4. So we're getting to the point where 8 points for 4 provisions is doable if you're willing to bend the rules a little bit, make your deck built around it with that intent in mind. So that's a really big deal. It's a very big change for the game. The defenders, I don't see a future where these are going to become 8 for 9s. Not anytime soon. So these are going to be a lot weaker. You really are giving up significant amounts of provisions and points for this to run these. And additionally, trading Pellar into any of these is pretty ballin'. With the exception of, I guess there really isn't an exception here. I mean, you'll get at least 1 extra defender out of Azar, but it's a 4 for 4 versus a 7 for 9, and they kind of break even on most of these, right? They'll break even on Fion, Troy, Cave. All of these, technically you have a second defender, so you have some use. You have an ability of some use. But that's a lot of provision to be giving up, relatively speaking. Imagine if I nerfed any leader ability in the game right now by 5 provision. Any of these that you thought were playable would immediately become trash. You're now risking that very reality when you're running into Purify everywhere. It's so easy to run. So I think Defender's futures it's just a very grim concept. And you'll see less and less and less of these as time goes on. If you have decks with lots of engines, you're going to be fine anyways without Defender because you have too many targets. Decks that are trying to run 1 or 2 big threats and hide them behind the Defender will struggle as time goes on as a result of how points are creeping up, Purifies are becoming cheaper, and for Defender cycle is just kind of chilling here. So hot take number 1 for this video, defenders are looking weaker than ever and we'll see less and less play as time goes on. Basically inevitably, until they are inevitably buffed to 8 points apiece. And that means this would be a 6, and then these would all be, you'd probably have 2 base strength, and then you'd buff the rest of these just by 1. Excellent. Moving along. Next hot take is patience. We're going over to patience, and my next hot take, this one's not really hot. I think you guys will agree with a portion of it, and then you're going to come out of your left hook and make you all pause for a moment. You ready? Meditating Mage and Leticia are long-term problems that probably need a level of resolution to address. Leticia will single-handedly win games by herself with Archgriffin or Alumni if left unanswered in round 1. So it basically forces your opponent and any deck that any player wants to play to have a lot of powerful removal tools, at minimum at a Purify and a Heat Wave. That is, it's not unhealthy for the game, but I wouldn't say it's healthy. It's good to have interaction. You want players to be interacting with each other. If we wanted to play a solitaire-like game, then we wouldn't be playing Gwent. We'd be playing solitaire. But in this case, I wonder if forcing it's bad. I think it's okay to have decks that don't have interaction. Or at least, according to CDPR, it is, because they made Vi. Now, I question Vi's existence, but having a more engine deck like Centurion Royal Guard is okay in my book. Vi is still a disease, and I hate it with the bottom of my heart, and it is by far the worst designed card in the game. So if anyone from CDPR is watching this, please, I've not forgotten how terrible Vi is for the game. Rework the heck out of it, please. Anyways, moving on to this. Leticia's ability to just say, you must answer me or you lose the game, is a little unhealthy. Add a 7 provision card. Now, it is okay to have a 13 provision card saying answer me or die. Kelly has proven that it is actually okay for the game to have that in it. But as a 6 or 7, I'm a little more mixed on my opinion there. Meditating Mage is also kind of causing problems. Same kind of deal as it's feeling out in the meta at the moment, where if you don't answer Meditating Mages very quickly, you lose. So you either are a very removal heavy deck, or you're going to play a really weird game. It's one of the two. I don't really like how it's changing the game, but here's where the left hook comes in. I actually don't want them to change the card, and that's where things get weird. Maybe the only thing I would change about it is get rid of the Vitality carryover. I think it's ridiculous. I think the answer is for Resilience. Get rid of all, when it goes over to the next round, just get rid of all statuses. Get rid of Doomed, get rid of Veil, get rid of Vitality, get rid of Bleeding. Just do a full wipe on Purify on all cards that are being carried over. Makes a lot of more sense in my book. It's like kind of like wiping the slate clean. Get rid of locks, just a pure, hey, if this thing has Resilience and it carries over next round, it purifies and gets rid of everything. Doesn't really affect the gameplay at first glance, but it makes it a lot cleaner. Not threatening a 20, 5, 6 extra 7 points on Meditating Mage, so they can play Adept and tick up the Artusa Adept a bunch, and then click it even more. Oh, anyways, kind of a disaster. I think that's one thing I would change. But I think the real answer here in the long run is Siegfried, my boy. You need to be a 5 for 5. You need to be a 5 for 5. So this goes back to a different game. This is where I'm gonna pull from one card game, because I love tracking different card games. Card games are super cool to me beyond just Gwent. I only play Gwent, but I follow other card games, the design decisions, the economics, and like the pricing. All that stuff fascinates me when it comes to card games. In the world's most popular and most lucrative game, Magic the Gathering, they had a similar problem, very similar to Meditating Mage. They had a mechanic called Dredge. And Dredge fundamentally morphed how the game was played. It was a graveyard-dependent mechanic, and it was very hard to interact with. And what Magic the Gathering realized is there's a bunch of players that like this style of deck. It's also really cool. We're using the design space in Magic the Gathering in a very unique way. So in Magic the Gathering, very aggressively using the graveyard, this very cool Dredge mechanic. And in Gwent, it's, hey, we have all these Resilience bronzes. That's new design space we've never touched before. It's kind of cool. And we really pushed what Bonded can do. So now people are really going out of their way to try to get these Bonded effects to go off. And their order abilities, so they want them all at the same time. It's not like one then the next, and the first one gets kind of bricked. It's actually like you're trying to time it all. It's pretty cool, but if you're trying to wait 2 turns, you have only like, yeah, it gets messy. You're sitting there, it's a 4 provision, 4 for 4. It's probably going to die, and the other one's a lot weaker. It's just Vitality instead of Boost because he has an Artusa student. It is actually fundamentally a cool design space, and I hope they keep it. But let's take a lesson from Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering figured out that the way to counteract the graveyard shenanigans was to make the ability to hate the absolute heck, I mean just punish people for using the graveyard as cheap as possible. I mean, they made that thing free. They made it so there was a card that you could have in your hand at the start of the game, which basically said, oh, am I here? You can play me for free. And in Magic the Gathering, there are costs called mana for playing most cards. And it's like, no, before the game even begins, if I'm in your hand, you can just play me for free. And while I'm out on the field and not removed, your opponent can remove it, but it takes some effort. While I'm out on the field, all cards that go to the graveyard are actually banished instead. Like literally nothing can go to the grave. Like, they literally made a card that casts itself for free from your starting hand and just says no graveyard. Your entire deck fails until you get rid of this card. And that's insane. And they actually printed that right around where they printed Dredge, probably anticipating that Dredge might some way in the future cause some problems. I would like to think that. But whether they stumbled their way into that card, and that was a great choice. It's called Leyline of the Void for people who are Magic the Gathering fans. Or whether they accidentally did, the reality, the answer to this problem remained clear. The answer to Dredge remained clear. Have cards that really punish greedy, powerful effects. And right now in the game, the reason we're struggling is, when it comes to the resilience carryover, there isn't a one card I punish the absolute heck out of you that exists. You have to have 4, 5, 6, 7 removal cards in your hand, and if you don't, you probably lose. If I could run Siegfried as a 5 for 5, I could easily tech this into most decks at minimal punishment. Probably still find value. A 5 for 5 Purify is typically pretty useful. Even if it is you purify my opponent's stuff, I just have to not put too many statuses out. Gotta be careful how many bounties and poisons are if I have a bounty out, clear it first. Don't put poison on multiple units. Not really an issue in modern day. But a 5 for 5 would, the entire conversation on Meditating Mage would be different. We'd all just shove a Siegfried into our deck and be annoyed. But then the Meditating Mage players would disappear, so all of us would sit there saying, huh, I wonder if I could greed a Peller instead. So we all start trying to bounce to greed our Pellers in. And then or maybe get rid of Purify entirely, and then there's somebody who's like, hey, everybody's getting greedy. Let me go back and punish the current meta by bringing back the Meditating Mage. This ended up being a really healthy choice for Magic the Gathering. It forced players to pay attention to what's on the ladder and adjust their decks accordingly. Or in Magic the Gathering was at tournaments. For Gwent, it would be on the ladder. Hey, I'm not seeing any Meditating Mages. Let me get rid of Siegfried. Though I will say, knowing my luck, the moment I would sub out my 5 for 5 Siegfried, I'm sure I'd only play Meditating Mage players because that's how God works and matchmaking. Anyways. Next hot take. Let me know, by the way, if you like my solution down below. I do think this is the future for CDPR if they want to keep this design space open, and I want them to do it. The game is getting more interesting and intricate, and I want them to be bold. I don't want passive things. I want cool pushing the limits. Nobody falls in love with a game over boring mechanics. Nobody's been like, oh, I love playing Gwent because Gwent has purifies, and that's really cool. No, people are like, I want to lock your units. I want to copy your units. I want to steal. I want to set up this carryover. I have a 4-card combo I want to do. People want crazy. Let them have crazy. Be bold, and then make neutral cards that can punish weird, bold strategies. Siegfried, 5 for 5. This is the campaign. I'm starting it now. We're advocating for it. Plain Talk family, I'm moving us officially to the 5 for 5 position for the Siegfried. I don't need more points here. I need a lower provision cost, lower points. And moving along. Next take. Fucusya. Fucusya, also known as Fuchsia Briefs. Also known as, my hot take, as the single best Skellige card in the game. It's not even close. Holy crap, this thing is godlike. Seriously, this thing is an absolute beast of a card. It doesn't even matter. You can nerf Melusines. Who cares? Maybe with the exception of a Lippy deck, because Lippy already replays everything by putting it back in your deck. This thing is a god. I don't even care what I'm resurrecting. It's almost a guaranteed 15 plus point card. It's insane. It's nuts. It's incredible. I don't know how much I have to actually argue this, because I think most of us are realizing it now. This is mind-blowing. And the only reason I like it is because at least the effect's interesting and it lets me do cool things. Having something this strong is dangerous. It's the Mamuna of Skellige. You're going to see it in pretty much every deck. It is so good. It's like, unless you clear out your opponent's graveyard. And then it has the same issues. The counter Mamuna to counter Fucusya. Same thing. It's unbelievable. The fact that you also deploy is just... It's so good. It's so good. And I don't even know if I have to say anything, guys. I think we've all played it now, right? Every one of you who has all the cards in the collection, and a lot of players, if not most players, have a complete collection at this point. Or at least can get all, and they have enough scraps to get the key cards, missing like all the weird neutrals, which is fine. Yeah, it's just nuts, right? Like, even at its worst, let's say it's absolute worst. I get back a 4 provision card. It's a 4 for 4. Let's get a Haymay Protector back, right? So it comes back. That's a 9 points, right? 4 plus 5, 9. And then it spawns rain for 6 turns on my opponent's row for 12. So that is absolute worst a 21 point card. 9 plus, no, did I math that right? Yeah, 9 plus 12, 21. Jeez, that's a lot of points for very little effort. Only thing it can't do is save you in round 1. But Mamuna can't do that either. Mamuna's already been insane to the point where it got nerfed twice. One more nerf and it hits that triple nerf, which I only know of one other card that took that hit, which was Vi. Vi used to be an 8 for 12. Like, back in my day, that was nuts. If Vi was 8 for 12 today, it would still be top tier. Fun fact. But this card's insane. You'll see it all the time. I like it still. I hope I don't come to hate this card. Speaking of which, my opinion from last hot take, Ryogen, the Undying. I told you guys it was all trash in my first hot take. And I would like to confirm that after all these days that yes, it's still trash. Sorry, guys. Sorry, still a bad card. I love its design. It's not worth resurrecting over other options. Like, literally all the other options. And tying up in 8 for 8 in the deck, where 8 for 4 is becoming more and more common. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm never going to run this card. Unless they print, like, a card that says, like, put 10 turns of rain on both your opponent's rows. Still trash. But that's besides the point. We'll see how that ages. Just tossing it out there. Next hot take, got one for the Brute. Brute, my boy. Brute. Oh, Skellige filter. That explains it. The Brute. All right, you guys ready for a hot take? The Brute is trash. I've tried so hard to make this card work, and I can't do it. So, someone out there, prove me wrong and break it. But Skellige feels like it, not Skellige, Syndicate feels like it's in a really tough place. Every single day this week, I've been giving it about an hour or two, just trying to find a way to save Syndicate, and so crazy. I'm really struggling. Someone's going to crack this, though. I believe someone will crack a good Syndicate deck. They have so many good tools these days. I think probably once the meta settles down, I'm getting that same kind of vibe that Nilfgaard gives me, where once the meta settles, Syndicate has enough poison and interesting tools that can figure out how to make their decks somewhat capable in the meta. Same deal for Nilfgaard. Once they know how many locks they need to run, how many poisons you need to run, how many purifies you need to run, then the Nilfgaard deck comes together. Same deal here for Syndicate. But with that said, I think this card's trash. I think it's just worse grading, and that's how I view it. 6 for 13, it's very risky, requires a huge commit to bounty, and it's just like a win more card fundamentally, where if my opponent, like somebody said when I was talking about this in chat on the live stream, they said, hey, you know, I got to use this against Tibber, and I got to get a, 19 point Brute with like Profit 7, and it was insane. I'm like, yes, but if you're playing a bounty deck of Graydon, you're probably already gonna win that game anyways, like straight up. But so the Brute feels like if the opponent is running tall units of high base strength, so with a lot of stuff to kill, I was already gonna win that game anyways when I'm playing bounty, so I probably don't need the Brute. But if my opponent is running very little interactive stuff, and every bounty I play might have a chance of failing, or I might have too much in my deck, then the Brute's going to be trash because I'm not going to be able to kill anything of note. In a sense, the Brute makes my matches that I was already on track to win even more likely to win, but I already had a really high chance of winning them anyways. And it makes my bad matches nearly impossible to win because I have to commit 13 provisions to this thing. Not a fan. I don't think this card's going to age well. Not for a long time. Let's get it down to 12 in a very unit-heavy meta, but with the rise of Skellige weather decks and meditating mages, where both of them want, from Skellige weather, you want to be running as few units as possible, and for meditating mages, you need a lot of removal. I can already see the meta pushing towards a less unit-heavy meta and a lot more point-slamming, removal-oriented stuff, so you can avoid Skellige weather, because Skellige weather really can go off. I may crap on Ryogen, because it's deserved, but the rest of the package is nuts. Therefore, to avoid having to deal with all the rain and the weather, go wild, right? You want to go wild with the point slam and the removal. Avoid actually committing points on board, unless it's something like, oh, this card gets played and it's all about the deploy effect and it's a low amount of points if you kill it, no big deal. Sweet. Final hot take here. Scenario related. It's becoming very clear that Passiflora is way behind the other scenarios. Ball may see some play. Aristocrat's still in a tough spot, but we'll see what Vilgefort's Renegade's able to do. But Ball is still a really strong scenario in terms of actual value you get from it. It's the best of the best. Siege is great. Haunt is great. And I think it'll age better as they add more Death Wish support, and people want Death Wish support. And CDPR has historically been willing to give a little nudge buffs here, there to older archetypes, whether it's via patch notes or a new card here, there. I think this will age fine. Having 2 consumes on a Haunt is pretty useful. Out of Haunt is pretty useful. 3 if Bargus gets to reactivate. Bane Death is great. Getty is fantastic now that druids have a lot of great options that are cheap, and the fact that I can get 3 to 4 Crocran Bleachers in a game without having to do really any hard work. Run 2 in the deck, you run Getty, and you run the Mushy Truffle, which spawns an alchemy that triggers them all. That's 4 Crocran Preachers in a deck. It's very easy to get multiple of them out for the +2 off the alchemies. Getty is great. Passiflora, it may be, my hot take is worst scenario by far, and it may be time to undo the weird nerf back in the day when it was really rampant and out of control. I think it's time to swap the chapters. Get the last chapter to be coins. It feels weird getting an engine so late. None of the other scenarios are foolish enough to do that. Right? Get your engine out early, and then things that trigger the engine. Get engine out early, get engine, second engine out, and then, card that doesn't require it because we're already, 2 additional turns into the round? Like, it's getting a little late for the engine. None of you are engine heavy. This is damage at the end, damage or spawning, and then the first one's an engine. Go to Getty, trigger, spawn an engine, trigger the engine twice, much like Masquerade Ball. But the nerf to Passiflora back then was to swap these two. It was pretty bad, and it's only aged worse. It feels clunky to use. I don't like it. Swap it back, let it be smooth again. If you have to, for some reason, just swapping these 2 chapters around breaks the game, which would blow my mind. Make it 15. Get back that feel of getting 2 engines and spawning then, or getting your coins at the end as a payout. I don't think it will. It'll really be like 1 additional point, maybe 2 on Slice Seductress. But that's it. It's not gonna make this OP. Passy needs some love. And those are my hot takes. Let me know down below which ones you like. I can summarize. Nah, you guys can rewatch the video. I don't need to summarize them at the end. Those are my hot takes. Let me know which ones you like down below. Agree with, disagree with. Let me know also if you like these kind of videos. Because it's a new round of the new type of content for the channel. The first one has seemed to be well received, so if you like these aren't too hard for me to do, so I can do more of them. Because I literally say, John, what's your most controversial opinions? Then put it in a YouTube video, shove it out there so everyone can see it and it's immortalized, and then, ignore it for 3 months until it turns out Ryugen breaks the meta and Passiflora is completely OP, and everybody says, hey, John, you remember that hot take from 3 months ago? Anyways, I love you all. I'll see you all soon, and take care. Take care, you beautiful people. Shout out to McRandar, Student Name 81, and Ahmed Ali for all their generous support on Patreon.